Welcome back, folks. Thank you for tuning into the Silver Stacking Podcast featuring yours truly and the man, the myth, the legendary Andy Shectman. You might want to grab some popcorn because this episode is going to be special. See, what makes this podcast so unique is that we get to talk to a CEO on a weekly basis. But folks, today we have two CEOs. Joining Andy Shectman, which is the CEO of Miles Franklin, we have Shawn KhunKhun, which is the CEO of Dolly Varden, a silver mining company. So this is going to be epic. Make sure you subscribe. This will be the first of many interviews with Shawn and Andy. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Doing great. Always good to be here, buddy, and great to see you again, Shawn, after seeing you in person a few weeks ago. Always a pleasure to be here with you, and now with the both of you. It's an honor.
I'm grateful to be here. I'm in great company, and so thanks, guys.
So, Shawn, I'm curious, how did you get into the mining industry, and why silver? Why specifically silver? Because there's not many focal silver miners.
So my story is this. My parents came over to Canada as immigrants from India. And so I was born and raised in Vancouver, Canada. I got, listen, being raised by Indian parents, they had always had gold as part of the culture. If there was a wedding, they're buying gold as gift giving. And, but being educated and growing up in Vancouver in our educational system, I thought my parents were crazy. I thought, why are they transferring their hard-earned time for money and then taking that money and buying jewelry? It just didn't make any sense to me. And I really thought they were insane. And then what happened was I got a job at 22 out of school. I went to work for a startup mining company. In Canada, we've got limited industries, but we're blessed with a lot of natural resources. And so mining is a big part of our culture in Canada. And so I went to go work for a gold mining company. And then I started going on the road, and I started listening to people like Rick Rule and others talking about this other role that gold has played for thousands of years. And I started getting this appreciation for what my parents were really doing. And, the long or the short is, as I helped build this gold mining company, 2004 to 2011. I watched this company grow from nothing to $1.5 billion business. I was employee number 5. There were 600 when I left the company, and the company was, producing. They had $100 million of cash in the bank. I watched. It was such an incredible, as like a young 20-year-old, to watch this happen and to watch the gold price go from sub 400 to 1900. And as I went all over the world and listened at conferences and started watching all sorts of different things, like all the debt that was being created, the quantitative easing after the great financial crisis. The reason, to answer your question, why silver? Well, I made more money for myself and my shareholders speculating on silver stocks in 6 months than I did building a gold mining company in 6 years. Wow. So the reason why silver is because through experience and through studying history, silver outperforms gold. And, there's just a gazillion reasons I can get into why silver now, but that's why silver from a high level.
That reminds me of Andy's story a little bit, starting at such a young age and, just blossoming into this whole career. Wow, that's really interesting. I know Andy and I talk about this a lot. Does it come out of the ground at 7-1 currently? I guess with your minds, or what is the ratio?
Good question, because Keith Neumeyer says that quite often. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so my understanding with silver, and again, like I've been mining and exploring and developing for the last 20 years, and so my experience has been, historically, the relationship has been closer to 16-1. Like if we go back and we look at the natural relationship in the Earth's crust, for every 1 ounce of gold, there's 16 ounces of silver. Now, it's been said to me that all the gold that's ever been mined would fill up 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And I would say 95% of that gold is still with us today. Some of it at the bottom of the ocean. However, the silver, it's getting used, and it's not all of it's getting recycled.
Right.
And so what I've seen in my career is I've seen that 16-1 natural relationship. If we talk, that's the natural relationship but from a mining perspective, we are, I'd say, maybe even under 7-1 now. For every 1 ounce of gold we mine, we're mining 7 ounces of silver. And so one would think that historically, the relationship in terms of price was about 15 to 1. You would think under the current environment of silver being used in industrial usages and all that, you would think that silver should be trading or gold should be trading 7 times more valuable than silver, but it's not.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing for people to understand that. To me, what that signals, and Shawn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like our skin is called epidermis, silver is found in nature in a form called epithermal, which is very near the surface. And to me, that signals that he's right. For 5,000 years, 16 to 1 was a geologic ratio. Even that was what Sir Isaac Newton chose to develop the relationship between gold and silver in the mint 200 years ago. That 16 to 1 has been pervasive forever. But it signals to me that if it's truly coming out of the ground, a mining ratio really would be more important and relevant than a geologic or than a price ratio, rather.
Right.
The mining ratio speaks to the fact that it's declining, it's becoming harder to get. And I guess at some point, if what you get is a byproduct of mining, that ratio the rubber has to meet the road at some point, so to speak. So I would agree. And this is one of the reasons I believe that silver is the most undervalued, underappreciated asset on the planet with maybe the best upside potential. And to Shawn's point, I will echo this as well. When I was 22 years old, I met a man, a client of mine, God rest his soul. His name was Jim Tomchek. And Jim said to me, Andy, how much money do you have? I said, I have $9,000 in an IRA. That's it, Jim. He says, put it all into this stock. Trust me, I'm a geologist. And it was called Western Copper. And it was 6 or 7 cents a share. Western Copper shortly then after, changed its name to Western Silver. Western Silver, not too long after that, was bought by Glamis for $7 a share, which was then bought by Gold Corp later for $30 a share. And I moved or converted $9,000 into almost $700,000. I made more money in that one trade than anything I've ever done in investing subsequently. And the moral of the story is, I think, to Shawn's point, that physical gold and silver are important and represent the financial base of your pyramid. But when you talk about making money, leverage, upside potential, it is found in spades in mining shares. And I've also learned that, being personal friends with Rick Rule for 20 years, that it's as much who you know as what you know. And Rick only associates with people who are serially successful. And lo and behold, I've seen Shawn at Rick's show each year. Rick personally vets every single mining company that is there. And that speaks a lot to Dolly Varden. It speaks a lot to you. And I think people need to understand that while physical gold and silver are integral to a portfolio, I think it's important to understand that mining shares offer leverage that you will not find in physical metal, and can really and should be part of every portfolio from a standpoint of appreciation potential. So just adding a little flavor to what you're saying, I completely agree. And I want to say one other thing, and I mean this, and I'm not just saying this, Shawn, because we're together. In our 45 minutes talking together a few weeks ago, I think I learned more about the mining industry than I did in 34 years in this industry, just by speaking to you candidly about all of the people that I've known in this industry, from Rick Rule, I've gone out to dinner several times with Keith Neumeier. I'm friends with a lot of people in the industry, but you're a wealth of information, and I think it's an honor to be here with you. And I think Slayer, I think your listeners should pay real close attention to what he's having to say, because honestly, in 45 minutes, I learned more about the way that the business works than in the 34 years preceding. So just hats off to you, Shawn, and look forward to hearing what you have to say here in the rest of this conversation.
Well, before we get into our conversation, I just want to say that means a lot coming from you, Andy. And I want to share something with you. I believe most people are good. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I'm an optimist, right? But trust is something that I was taught is earned. And I remember when I first heard about, buying gold or silver, and I heard about people that you could buy gold and silver from, and then they store it for you. And all I can say is this is a business of trust.
Yeah.
And I would store my gold and silver with you. That's like,
Well,
I
mhm.
trust you, and I know your business is set up in a way. I don't know all the details, but you've got all the accreditations um, but no, I just think that I met a friend and somebody who works for your organization when I was down in Boca. And what I learned about you, Andy, that I didn't know, I watch your YouTubes, and I think, you're a great advocate for educating people to get through, and not only to get through and preserve their purchasing power, but potentially even prosper and get ahead, right? There was a time where, after the Great Depression or during the Great Depression, that if a person had put a small percentage of their net worth into gold and silver, 10%, it got them through the depression, and so you're a great advocate and you're a great source of information. But what I learned about you in Boca that I didn't know is that you've surrounded yourself with friends who are like your family, and they love you and they
Mm.
believe in you and they trust you, and how you and it just, for the viewers who don't know you, and like I saw, you had a lot of metal, right? And the trust that you have with your employees who are your friends, who you've known your whole life, and they all have had success and they've all come back and they all work with you. It tells me a lot about your organization. It tells me a lot about you as a person. I've met your wife,
Mhm.
and I know the way you treat her and how it just says a lot about who you are. And not everybody at home, understands that. And I know that firsthand. And
Well,
so
that means a lot to me too, and I'm all good with Love Fest. We can keep doing this all day. Thank
let's
you.
get
I
on with it.
I really do appreciate, but that is also the foundation of me and the Slayers relationship. And he'll offline, he'll tell you how we came together, and I think you should tell that story. And um, it's that's what it is. Everything is trust in this industry. It's like eBay. If you screw up on eBay and you get a bad mark, you're off eBay. You're not going to do well anymore. This industry is all about trust, 100%. And maybe the best, the greatest achievement of my career is in 10 billion in sales. We've never had a customer complaint. We work very hard to earn trust, and whether it be for someone like you or Rick Rule or the Silver Slayer or any of the people who are my contemporaries or our clients, it is the key to business. It is to do no harm. To the golden rule is really all you need to know to be successful in business is just take care of people, do what you would want done to your own family or to yourself. So, anyways, I appreciate the kind words. They're echoed, and again, like I said. You're a wealth of information, so let's continue and see what we have to uncover.
Yeah, this was a lot of people might not know this, but it was supposed to be me and Shawn just originally, but I invited Andy on as well. Like this wasn't planned. Like it's just a cool way to network, and I love how this is already turning out. So Shawn, you said something that was very interesting when you were talking about the ratio coming out of the Earth's crust. You said there's enough gold to fill two Olympic swimming pools, but most of that gold is still in circulation. A lot of people don't think about that, right? Because gold is used mainly for jewelry and coins and bars, so it gets remelted into more jewelry and coins and bars, where silver is industrial, so it's thrown away in landfills and never to be recycled. So an ounce of gold that gets dug up out of the ground compared to an ounce of silver, that silver is going to be gone within a couple of decades. So even if the ratio coming out of the Earth's crust is 7 to 1, it's much lower when you look at that. On top of it being a byproduct, it's usually found by accident anyway. So yeah, I wanted to add on to that. I think it's a lot of people don't think of it like that when they just look at a number. They have to think of the context beyond it. So I wanted to go into something right away because I really want your thoughts on this. I was listening to some interviews with you, and you mentioned Keith Newmeyer, but do you think we have enough silver to go green? Just as blunt as that.
It's a great question. I think there's some great campaign slogans that some politicians usher out about, where they want to get to on a net zero basis. I'm a little skeptical. And I think it goes even beyond silver. I think, there's some other metals that are needed in this energy transition. Look, I think you got to take it on a case by case basis, and whether you're talking, whether you're talking like electric vehicles, for instance. I think on a case by case basis, there's cities like Santiago, Chile, where you've got major air quality issues. that's a great test example where EVs would be incredible. That's not going to work in middle America. So I think, look, I think that the reality is, to answer your question, I don't buy it. I look at a company like Tesla, and I see a coal-powered car. I see an unprofitable company. I see a wonderful marketing machine. I don't buy any of it. I think that all of the goals of net zero 2030 are going to get pushed to 2040 and 2050. And just like ESG, I think there's going to be a snapback. The pendulum swings, and I think we've gone too far, and reality is going to sink in. And I think from my vantage point of being in the mining industry for 20 years, and I'm around the miners who, if we need to accomplish these goals, they're the ones who are getting the stuff out of the ground to make it happen, and they don't have the answers. The industry doesn't have the answers. And there are some politicians that will come meet with me, and different energy ministers from all over the world will come and talk to us about how we get there. But the reality is, industry doesn't have the solution. I don't know about you, but I don't trust government to get us there. So I think they're just political campaign slogans that sound great. I think the reality is, to get there, it's probably going to be a nuclear solution in terms of uranium. You'll have a combination, and I think you really have to look at it regionally. I had an uncle who lived in Livermore, California, who worked at a facility down there where they would study a lot of things, nuclear, solar. And I think what I learned from my experiences growing up, going to that facility in Livermore, California, was that every region has a different solution. And for some of it's solar, maybe for some of it's wind. But listen, nothing beats the internal combustion engine. And so I think it's a combination, but I don't put a lot of weight into this green movement. But what I do put a lot of weight into is, I know from where my people are from, Southeast Asia. I know that in Africa, the rest of the world wants to live like us, right? And that does mean electricity. It means improvements. It means infrastructure. And so I don't necessarily call that a green movement. It's just a movement to higher living standards. And it'll be very, very interesting how we transition to getting light to the rest of the world.
I always say everyone wants a slice of the silver pie, but there's simply not enough pie to go around.
Which would lead me to a question that I have for Shawn.
Yeah.
I had lunch yesterday or 2 days ago with Chris Marcus from Arcadia Economics and discussed an interview that he and Vince Lancy did recently, where he says, according to mainland Chinese sources, China is buying unrefined silver concentrate from the Latin America miners and refiners, something infrequently done except briefly during times of acute supply-demand imbalances. I'm reading this piece from their article where he says, China is paying refined prices for unrefined silver concentrate, spending as much as $200 more a ton for each load of material. China is effectively laying claim to Latin America silver before it is refined and crowding out Western buyers by paying higher prices for ore without directly affecting spot prices. Based on these findings, there are serious implications for silver's price and accessibility down the road, which also raises questions about silver's importance as a critical metal in the U.S. I found that to be fascinating because what we have seen for a very long time is a draining of the exchanges of the LBMA down to their lowest level since they've been recording supplies, roughly 800 million ounces, of which 500 million belongs to the ETF. So that's only 300 million ounces. And so how much more can you take before it really gets noticed? Or off of COMEX, where are you going to find silver if it is depleting to 7-1? And I found this story very interesting. I don't know if you can corroborate it at all or not, but basically what they're saying is China is just going in and outbidding for the unrefined silver and the concentrate, bringing it home and refining it. But this acquisition does not affect the silver price directly because they're getting it before it's a refined product. I found that to be very compelling. I don't know if you have anything you could add to that.
Well, what I find really interesting is there is a movement, a quiet movement, where royalty companies, streaming companies, will come to Because remember, most of the silver, 72.5% of silver comes by way of byproduct. So a lot of these producers, these private producers, small producers throughout Latin America, throughout the entire world, they don't even, they're there for the copper, they're there for the lead, they're there for the zinc, they're there for the gold. The silver's a byproduct, right? So, there has been multi-billion dollar businesses. One of them was actually built in the office that I'm in by my business partner, Frank Justra, a company that's today called Wheaton Precious Metals, right? And that's a company that was built on this very idea that they're quietly going out and taking on the silver that is the byproduct. So I just think it's opaque in terms of there's not a lot of transparency around that silver byproduct. It's particularly if it's 72% of the market. So, I'm seeing, and Andy, I've been doing this 20 years. Something happened in around March or April. Maybe we have to go back to the charts. Whenever silver went through 25, the amount, like, my phone went off the hook. My inbox blew up. The corporates that are the silver miners, they are out there trying to source product frantically.
Yep.
And so I've seen, from my experience, a market where you almost couldn't give this stuff away in September of last year at $20. And there is a frantic stampede to secure future supply. And the premiums that deals are getting done, and the amount of capital that's willing to come into these names now, it's crazy.
Are you able to speak at all, or if you'd rather not from the perch that you sit upon, I understand it. But I think the elephant in the room is the question that most people would want to ask you. It's the one that I like to ask. And I apologize if it's something you don't want to answer, you can agree not to. But the question that I would ask is the silver market manipulated? And if so, why isn't there more? I mean, Keith Neumeyer talks about it. Why are there not more people in your position who are screaming from the rooftops? And again, please accept my apologies.
This guy's his ears are burning. His ears are burning.
His ears must be ringing.
He's like, why am I not on here? Sorry to interrupt.
That's a question I have. And again, I apologize if it's one that I shouldn't be asking a CEO of a publicly traded mining company, but it just screams to me that this is not how markets behave. And why aren't people screaming about it who are pulling it out of the ground?
Yeah, it looks like, I think what my shareholders would probably want me to do is to be very diplomatic. But the reality is, the whole reason I'm here is because I do believe, and not only do I believe it, I've seen it. I've seen the manipulation. I've seen, and there's been some great people that have done some great work, including our friend Chris Marcus, uncovering that. But it's 100% manipulated, 100%. And this goes back to where, Keith is such a trailblazer, and he's the poster boy for CEOs by doing the first mint, and taking 250 million ounces of silver off the market, off the manipulation. And I think, and just so you understand how, like, where I'll put my money where my mouth is, we're not mining silver today. Dolly Varden was the richest silver mine in the British Empire. And you got to think about the British Empire. It's a big empire, right? The sun never set on the British Empire. We were Canada's third largest silver mine, but we're not mining today. Why? Because I'm not giving it away at these prices, because it is manipulated. And we will get price discovery. And so my goal, and Jordan, you might not know this, but it's to build that inventory in the ground. I see it as a bank. And I'll take it. I was told 20 years ago, when I first came into this industry, that, and you got to think, if you go back and you look at some big markets, 2007, you look at where the Dow was, you look at where some of the indexes were, and you look at what was dominating, I can speak to Canada, what was dominating the TSX in 2007? It was bank stocks. Okay. And what I was told back then are the new bank stocks of the future are going to be the miners, the gold and silver miners. Those are going to be There would be the big dividend payers. And so I had this idea where I want to create a bank, but what's my inventory? It's silver and gold in the ground.
In the
And I
ground. That is
before,
crazy.
well, why dig it up just to bury it again, right? That was my thinking, right? But so why not have a big inventory? So as prices move up, so will the value of my bank balance, right? And so I would take a step further that, and I've seen Keith do this. Not every time Keith, First Majestic produces an ounce, they go out and run out and sell it. When silver's getting beaten up, when silver's getting leaned on, when the guys at the Comex are raising margin requirements and they're beating up the price, First Majestic doesn't sell into that. And so more CEOs, the problem in our industry is there's a lot of guys running mining companies that are scientists or accountants, right? And they're there because, they studied rocks or they studied numbers. What you want a guy like Keith at the helm. You want a guy who, Phil Baker was like this when he was running Hecla. They're visionaries. They understood what was happening. They could count, and they realized that there's something coming. And Andy, you talk about this, right? You talk about what's coming, and you talk about you didn't want to be right, right? You've been proven right, but it's what's coming is there is going to be a revaluation. And people ask me, they're like, "Hey, where do you think the price is going to go?" And it's like, what are we measuring it in?
Right.
You go to the Weimar Republic, and what were they measuring it in, right? Like you go to different, and every currency fails, every fiat fails, nothing's backing this US dollar today. And so I think I've gone a little bit off course here, but to answer your question, I was skeptical on manipulation. But in April of 2011, when real price discovery was about to occur, and overnight margin requirements were raised, and people didn't even have an opportunity to get off their positions, they were sold for them. There was water put on the fire to put it out. I've seen it too many times. How many times do we need to see a big bank get fined for manipulation? So it's like, they can make tens of billions of dollars and pay a fine measured in the millions. How many times? How many more smoking guns do we need before they stop calling us, tinfoil hat conspiracy guys? And you know what? You know what I was told though? The manipulation is to the upside. That if you think about and Andy, you're on mute right now.
I said you've rapidly just become one of my favorite mining executives, and I appreciate your candor very, very much. Truly, I do. And to your point, J.P. Morgan was fined $920 million for manipulating the market, yet their desk made $1 billion that year. They walked away 80 million up and a slap on the wrist, and are still allowed to be the administrator of the world's largest silver trust.
Right.
And I apologize for holding your feet to the fire, knowing Jordan probably could have cut that out. But I think really that's the question that most of us people who have held on for a long time are dying to know. And it seems to me that you're not a geologist, you're a businessman. And I think that's what differentiates Keith. And evidently that's what differentiates you as well, in the respect that you understand business, you understand the big picture, and that's obviously a reason to own your stock. But thank you for being so candid on that. And look, I think anyone who owns precious metals owes a debt of gratitude to Chris Powell and Bill Murphy, and to guys like Chris Marcus who have gone out there and shown a light. His video with Bart Chilton, the former head of the CFTC, where he admits all this stuff and then died a week later, is one that everyone needs to watch. Everybody needs to watch Chris Marcus's video with Bart Chilton, where he explains all of this stuff. But no, I do appreciate that very, very much.
And I gotta say, because there might be some people that are new to all this stuff that aren't uber sophisticated on everything we're talking about. And to anybody that's new that's tuning in, I want to just say a few things, which is, look, where you start in this journey, and like I'll talk to you about an experience I had. So it's March of 2020, okay, and I'm picking up my kids from school, Okay. So 4 years ago, my son's 11, right? My
That's how much
daughter's
silver was. Silver was $11 March 2022.
and so I'm picking them up from school, and I had this feeling, mainly because I had a friend in China who, going back to as early as Christmas of 2019, was sending me masks and was saying, "Hey, there's something coming." He knew my mom was supposed to go over to India for a trip, and he goes, "Shawn, don't let your mom go on that trip. Her trip was February 6th." And so I made her cancel her trip, and she was mad at me until middle March when we went into the full lockdowns. My point of the story is this. So I'm picking my kids up from school, and everything was about to shut down for months, and for some places a year or two, depending on what part of the world you're in. The silver to gold ratio in that moment, Andy, was 125 to 1. They
I
took
remember.
they took silver below 12. You're right. They took it to 1194, I think is the. So I went out and I said to my kids, "Hey, listen, I'll make you a deal. Take all your birthday money. They rake leaves, they mow lawns, they're little entrepreneurs like their dad." And I said, "I will match you dollar for dollar, because what I want to show you here is this is a moment where assets trade at different values." And it was 125 to 1 ratio. Now, we never got silver at 1194, even though that was the paper or digital price they were quoted. We paid $18 an ounce. But we accumulated with their birthday money. We went in there, and the reason I share that story to you is for any of your viewers at home and her going, "Okay, well, I see the record debts. I can't stretch my dollars. I'm working multiple jobs. I'm trying to stay, what do I do?" You start with physical. You start with physical. And there isn't anybody out there that can't start with 1 ounce of silver. And Andy, you're a trusted name in the space. You provide a great service. You start with Andy, right? That's where you start. And then if you want to learn more, you can get into the royalty companies like Wheaton. If you want to learn more, then you buy a producer like First Majestic. And then as you further speculate and you really understand the business, then you start looking at companies that are finding it and growing their deposits, and you can start speculating on silver equities. But you start with physical. You got to get out of these dollars. You have to get out of these dollars, because just ask yourself what a dollar bought you 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 20 years ago. What does it buy you today? And that's the first place you start. You start with the physical, and like Andy and I can go into a little bit of context and details of why in my 43 years on this planet, investing, speculating, I haven't seen an investment like silver, and that's
Me
why
neither.
I'm all in on silver. I would say, I want to say 55 to 60% of my net worth is in silver and gold.
Yep. I would say that's low compared to where I'm at. These are all very fascinating questions. I guess I have one more, and I don't mean to monopolize. Um, there are currently 8 banks that hold the largest concentrated position in silver of any commodity traded. What will it take for companies to disintermediate the commercial banks? What will it take? And is it something that companies like Dolly Varden or others are thinking of disintermediating and going straight to the public, straight to the end user, straight to the producers or the manufacturers of products who need silver? Are we getting to that point?
The first job I had in the mining space, I worked for an old chairman, and he was a guy that heard Nixon on the radio in 1971 say we're closing the gold window, and he went out and staked some gold claims. His business model was to, just find gold and not sell it and give it away and get out of the system, because he believed that the bullion banks orchestrating with relationships with miners were keeping the price down. So he wanted to get out of that system. So to answer your question, Andy, I think you need a free thinker. I think you need somebody who, whether it was listening to Nixon in 71, or I wasn't around in 71, so I didn't hear that address, right? For me, it was just, it was watching things like simple things like 9/11 happened. watching those towers come down and watching, the world shutting down for a minute and everybody rushing to gold and silver. And I thought, as a 20-year-old kid, I was like, why is everything in the world down and this up? So I think you need people that have had some experiences going, there's something special, there's something different, there's something, and so you're not going to have your run-of-the-mill executive get off the program and do something like you're talking about. But I think for those who have an appreciation for what these things are, they're not commodities. They're not, right? This is money. And
Wealth. Yeah.
yeah, it's wealth.
Couldn't
And
agree more. You're a smart man, Shawn, and I think that if for nothing else, your stock to me becomes more valuable based upon your direction and understanding of where we are in this cycle, what's important, and where we're ultimately going. Jordan, I don't mean to have monopolized this
No, no, no,
conversation,
no. This is
but like I said, I spoke this way to him for 45 minutes a few weeks ago in Boca, and he's a wealth of information. I learned more from him than I did in all of my time associating with people that I call a friend, like Rick Rule and all of his associates. That's not a knock on Rick. It's just that I had a chance to ask him the questions I've been dying to know. And here are a few more that I figured others would like to know. So again, thank you for your candor. And I'll shut up and let you take charge now, Jordan, and let you lead the direction.
No, I like this organic format, and you asked a lot of the questions I was going to about
Mhm.
price manipulation. But yeah, I really like how honest you were mentioning, for someone who's a beginner, because that's who I try to reach, the person that's never invested a single dollar in their life, don't even know that they have the option of silver to protect themselves. I like how you broke it down. Start with physical, right? Just do that, then get into this. Because it can be very overwhelming, watching a video like this as someone, how confusing and it might just push someone away. But I like that you explained that, buy from Andy, someone's trusted. So I want to go into this. This is a very interesting thing that I've always talked about, but I never had someone to ask, I guess. We talk about so much silver being left and how, 770 million ounce supply deficit in the last 4 years alone, 252 million ounce deficit they're projecting this year. This all leads to something. Yeah, we make a pretty penny, but at what cost? We still need the silver to advance digitally. Where are we going to get it? Recycling won't put a dent. I mean, there's three options: recycling, mining innovation, taking it from us, or space mining. Now, we can go into space mining in a second, but I want to ask you about mining innovation. Is mining innovation even a thing? Are they finding more effective ways to dig it out of the ground, or is there even that much left? Like what I always wanted to ask someone that question.
from my perspective, I think people like to bring out, and I think they're marketing gimmicks where they'll say, "Hey, you know what? We're using artificial intelligence in our exploration," and I don't buy it.
Hmm.
Um, I really don't. I haven't seen it.
It's a
I
buzzword.
Yeah. So, but if I say to you, like, if my company has a hit and people go, well, how did you make that hit? And previous explorers couldn't make that hit. And I said, well, it's because we're using AI. Well, then some people might go, oh, they're going to really continue to do this and that. And I haven't, for me, it goes back to like all this stuff. Like Andy talked about servicing his clients. It's that simple, right? Bonnie Rule told Rick the same advice, and that's how Rick became as successful as he is. Put the client first. Everything else will take care of itself.
Yep.
It's the same thing in my business. Look, there is no big innovation. There's some minor things I can talk about, but the bottom line is the best place to look for silver and gold is next to a silver or gold mine because there's a good chance you can expand and extend that vein.
Hmm.
And so that's what we do. We put in the work. It's a block and tackle exercise. Look, there are some innovations. Like one of the things we're using this year is called directional drilling. And so what we do is we drill a mother hole and then we drill some daughter holes off the mother hole and it saves us some meters. That's innovation. There are things
Yeah.
called, there's geochemistry and geophysics, so you can study, but they're all just tools in the toolbox. So there is some technological advances. I don't want to minimize that importance, but I'll tell you, the technology is fighting the low-hanging fruit being mined. Okay, so you look at Pierre Lassonde built a business called Franco Nevada, and it was an incredible business. And Pierre talks about 1,000-meter drill holes at 1 ounce per ton. They've never, Andy, you talked about an investment into what was Western Copper going into Western Silver becoming Gold Corp, and that was the best.
First Glamis and then Gold Corp. Yeah,
Glamis and Gold Corp, and that was one of the best investments you ever made, right?
for sure.
Isn't it a little bit sad though that you and Pierre Lassonde have something in common? That first investment was one of the best ones you ever made. And it goes back to the low-hanging fruit being picked and the technology, the advances. The reality is we're just mining lower and lower and lower and lower grades. And so to answer, I wish I could sit here and say, you know what? Yeah, AI solved it all, and I could plug in all this historic data and it gives me information, and it doesn't work that way. It's actually the old timers had it right. What we do here is we go back and we don't do everything digitally on computers. We look at old maps, we draw paper sections, and we just, my team laughs at me because I just say, these things just need love. Just give it some love. Like that's all it needs. Just put the time, the energy, and so I hate to say, the innovation is just keeping pace. Now, where the opportunity lies, in my perspective, is to go into places that others haven't gone. So in my case, it's been a move north. I've gone north, right? The glaciers are receding. Their infrastructure's coming into areas that didn't have it. So I've been going north, and we've got an abundance of treasures up here in Canada. For others, the frontiers are the jungles. They're the jungles in South America, the deserts in Africa. For me, it's north.
I was talking to one of the exhibitors at the show, and I forgot his name. Very interesting guy. And he was telling me about how he spent a couple of years way up north drilling in temperatures that were dangerously cold. And I would think that would be the one area where you would have unfettered access. But isn't it hard to drill into the ground that is completely and totally frozen and is under snow and way up in the Yukon and way up north?
It's interesting. There is a relationship throughout the country of big deposits being near lakes. So some of the greatest mines in Canada, Kirkland Lake, Red Lake, and it goes on and on and on. And I could
Does
give
that
you
have to do with the glaciers and how that creates silver?
That part of that is that narrative. But my point on the lake side is the best time to drill these things is to get up on the ice when it is frozen. And because you got to think when you have a spring thaw, it's hard to move equipment around. It's actually, there's two great times to drill: when things are frozen or summer. And so, look, there are companies. I think it's the third largest gold mining company is Agnico Eagle. That's publicly traded, and they're masters of the North. They mine in the Arctic, right? Whether it's in Scandinavian countries, whether it's up here in Canada, and so I look at that's our competitive advantage. And how what I learned? There was a guy at the conference. I don't know if you ran into Bob Quartermain.
I know, Bob.
I've learned a lot listening to guys like Bob. So Bob went up north, and he learned the language of the indigenous people in the north. He learned the language, and he went up there and he said to them, "Will you partner with me? There's nobody that knows the north better than you guys. You guys have been up here, hunting and fishing and living and prospering for centuries. Can you help me build a project?" And he leveraged their knowledge of the north, and he worked with them, and he shared the wealth with them, and they built. There's a company called, Newmont has the mine now. It's called Brucejack. But Bob Quartermain built that. It was in silver standard, and another Rick Rule investment. And it went into Newcrest, and then now it's in Newmont. But it's just a marvelous example of northern projects. Andy, you got to come up and see this mine.
Yeah,
You got to.
that's what I was about to say. I want to come vlog it. My audience would love that.
Well, you honestly, you guys have a welcome invitation, and I can talk to some of the other mining companies in the area, but you guys wouldn't believe what they're doing. They're driving trucks across glaciers, and this is one of the most profitable mines on the planet. And anyways, I see a little Egyptian thing behind you there. They call it the Valley of the Kings. That's what they've named this district, the Valley of the
Wow.
Kings, right? And no, it's an incredible, it's beautiful, and the Northerners, they want it. They want the jobs. These communities have 85% unemployment. They need it. So no, it's yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, and that leads me to, one of the things that I think has made me successful in this industry is relationships. And obviously Bob Quartermain figured that out, that relationships make the world go round. And there's so much to be gained in business and in friendship and in life by embracing relationships. And it's made my business much stronger, and evidently has made Bob's as well. I think there's a lot to be learned from that. And the fact that you understand that, I think, again, speaks volumes to you. I hope people are getting to see what kind of person you are and what type of insight you have, that mining metals is a whole lot deeper, no pun intended, than just digging a hole in the ground. And I think that's a good example of it. And that's one of the things that made Rick successful, and I think made me. You learn from other people, you leverage your experience with other people, and that's how you make yourself and your company and your surroundings and the people you work with better. So again, kudos to you for acknowledging and understanding that, and I'm sure it makes you a much better entrepreneur and businessman and CEO of a big mining company as a result of it.
I'm really impressed. I was watching some other interviews of you the last couple of weeks, and I am really impressed. I'm glad to be able to offer, my audience, your knowledge and wisdom as well. Like Andy was saying, you learn so much. Just like Andy, you listen to Andy talk within an hour, and it's just a wealth of information. And now to have you as well with an entirely different sector, it's so interesting. It's very interesting. I'm so glad because I've always talked about mining and just the fundamentals of it. I do see Dolly. I'm on dollyvardensilver.com, by the way, which is a really cool website. So it says you have 88 square kilometer, or it's 88 square kilometers, half of the company's 163, located in Golden Triangle of Northwest British Columbia. Can you talk about that, like the mine
Sure. Yeah.
itself?
Listen, so I think, listen, I think a lot of people have, learned about, the California gold rush. There was another very, very big gold rush up in the north, the Klondike gold rush up in the Yukon around the 1890s. But what some people don't know is on the way up to the Yukon, on the way up to the rich gold placer creeks in Dawson, is an area it's right on the Alaska, Yukon, BC border. And the closest town there is a town called Stewart, British Columbia. And we've named the area the Golden Triangle. There's been 1.2 billion ounces of silver discovered. There's been 155 million ounces of gold. I won't get into the copper, but the reality is it's an area that's been mining for 100 years. And what's really incredible about the area, so listen, it's easy to get to. You can drive there. You can take it's connected to Tidewater, the deep water seaports there. You can drive there. You can fly there. You can boat there. This is an area that what strikes me about the area, it's the richest 20 kilometers on the planet for gold and silver mineralization. But what strikes me about the area is this area used to be covered by ice and snow, and it's receded. Every year I go up there, I take a picture at this one glacier, and that glacier keeps pulling back, right? And so it's an area that is being it's now not covered by ice. And yet, you guys ever see the Kevin Costner movie Field of Dreams? Uh, there's
Absolutely.
there's a saying, if you build it, they will come. And so the BC government took that philosophy and they thought if we invested into roads, power, and Bob Quartermain was actually the guy that brought $100 million power line into Bruce Jack, the Northwest Transmission Line. It was Bob who did that. So the power's there, the roads are there, the deep water seaport's there. But what's crazy about this area, guys, is think back to when the gold price was around 200. People are like, hey, when did the gold price bottom? It was when Gordon Brown, the exchequer, sold half of Britain's gold, right? At that time,
At
Barrick,
$252 an ounce, may I add? Sorry to interrupt.
no problem. But Barrick was up there in the Golden Triangle. Okay. It's call it 250 gold. They were so rich, they were flying the gold out. They didn't have roads. It was so rich. And it was a time where the prices of the metals were low. There was no infrastructure, and glaciers covered everything. And so, to answer your question of Dolly Varden, I had this idea. So, I've been on this path, this journey. How do I preserve my purchasing power? And so I studied history, and I found that what got the North through the Great Depression was gold and silver mining. And so I think we're moving back to a very scary moment. Here we are almost 100 years later to the crash in 1929. And I think for me, what's going to get me through it, what's going to preserve my wealth and my purchasing power and potentially thrive is gold mining, gold and silver mining. And, people call it the Golden Triangle. I call it the Silver Triangle because, there's been a lot more silver, almost 10 times as much silver found there as there is gold. And so it's a rich area. It's a wonderful area. It's a beautiful area. There's beautiful people that are up there. And so it was the richest silver mine in the British Empire. It was Canada's third largest silver mine. And we're finding a lot of high grade silver. So again, like my idea here, so I came in 4 years ago, and this was a company that was valued at around $20 million. It was a $20 million company. And the company had identified about 40 million ounces of silver in the ground. And the price of silver was around $16. So the market was valuing the $16 price that you get an ounce of silver. They were valuing our ounces in the ground at 40 cents. Okay. What I was on a quest to take the project to 100 million ounces of silver in the ground, because I had gone through previous market cycles where silver would get valued at $4 an ounce in the ground. If the price is 30, 40, 50, you're not getting 40 cents, you're getting $4. So my thinking was, how many ounces could we identify here? So it's not about mining ounces. It's about trying to grow that mineral inventory in the ground.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And so look, I've been very lucky. We've had some incredible people, silver miners like Hecla, investors like Eric Sprott, institutions like Fidelity, because they've gotten to know me over the last 20 years. They gave me $90 million. And they said, Shawn, go out and grow the inventory. So with that $90 million, I've, through acquisitions, through drilling, I've added about 100 million ounces of silver. So now we have about 150 million ounces of silver in the ground. Okay. And we're getting valued at around $2 an ounce in the ground because the silver price has almost doubled. But I still think we're going to get at least $4. But I will say to my friends and my coworkers, look, what $4 bought me in 2011 is not what $4 buys me today. So I actually think we might get $5, $6, $7, $8 an ounce in the ground. But the question that I have is, how many ounces will we have in the future? Will we have 200 million? Will we have 250 million? And so look, that's the idea here. The idea is I want to grow the mineral inventory. And at some point, when it's appropriate, when people will actually pay us an appropriate price for the metal, we'll start mining it. And maybe it's not us that mine it. Maybe a larger entity. Maybe it could be our 15% shareholder, Hecla. Maybe somebody else will decide that, hey, this is the next project that we want in our development pipeline. But
and they pay you $15 or $18 or $20, and that's the genius of it all, Jordan. That's the genius of it all, you out there. What he's saying is he's building a property that has known and growing and rich resources that are unexploited and identified, and they drill it and they see it. They know it's there. They just haven't pulled it out of the ground. It's a giant gold and silver piggy bank
That
waiting
is
for a big
so
company to say,
genius.
this is what we want. And this is how you make money owning mining shares, either by them becoming a producer or selling to a big producer who does it for them. Either way, it enriches the shareholder. And you could argue it's a very smart way, keeping costs low for their shares and for their company, while at the same time identifying tremendous
That is.
reserves and being a prime target for acquisition for those companies that are looking for that exact type of property in a known area that is rich in resources that they've identified. It's actually quite smart and quite a business model, if you ask me.
You own land right next to Hecla, right? Like adjacent?
Well, the real story there is um, Hecla invested in Dolly Varden, and then Hecla tried to do a hostile takeover.
I wanted to ask that question, but I didn't know if you wanted me to ask it.
And at the same time, another bid came in from another company called Skeena. So there was some competitive tension and multiple bids. And the reason I actually run Dolly Varden, the reason I came in as a CEO, is my friend. It was a bit of a David and Goliath situation. My friend said, you know what? I think we're going to get a higher valuation. I don't think they're, we're getting proper price discovery. So my friend put a lot of money in personally to keep the company independent so that they could, for the shareholders, develop, reach its full potential. And so, subsequent to the hostile takeover attempt, Hecla had purchased the ground next to Dolly Varden. So it worked the other way around. Dolly Varden project was discovered in the early 1900s. It was actually a former US president, Herbert Hoover, who took the mine into production in 1919, produced for a few years. The biggest production skin was in the 1950s. But it's really sat dormant. And then what I did is I had this vision where I looked at it and I thought, okay, there's 40 million ounces in the ground. If I drilled here and bought that, we could maybe get to 100 million. It's exceeded my expectations by going to 150. But now that I'm really understanding the geology, or I should say my team of scientists are understanding the geology, I think we could actually grow it to maybe 200 million, possibly beyond. It's a rich area that's hosted deposits that have been, 200 million ounces at SK Creek and others. So look, it's Hecla came after we did. But you know what? They're great people. They've been great supporters of mine. They actually, since joining, they've increased their stake in the company from 10% to 15%. We've got a wonderful relationship with them today. And they're going to be up at site here on August 6th, just doing a tour to see how things are going on the drilling side, see if we're making new discoveries. And so they're a partner and they're a great shareholder. And yeah.
If that doesn't signal optimism for the property, I don't know what does. I mean, a hostile takeover is hostile, but it also goes to show that a company that has lots of money and is a major producer wants that property. That speaks volumes as far as I'm concerned. So, and now that they're a partner, it's even better. So that's very cool.
And I got to
Wow.
say for all your viewers, because I think it's Andy, you and I have a responsibility to take care of people, right? We have that responsibility. And I got to say, mining's a risky game. Mining's a tough game. You've got the cyclical nature of commodity prices, the ups and downs. And so, I will do my best. I will work as hard as I can. I will bring in the smartest scientists. I will work with the best bankers. I will give you opportunities to win, but there are things in the world that are bigger than me. And that's the price of commodities. It's what's the endowed on the property, and mining is such a humbling business that, it is fraught with risk. And that's why when I said there is no counterparty risk when you go to Andy and you buy physical, you
Right.
own it, you have it in your hands. But as if you're a speculator, if you want more leverage, that's when you start looking at the royalty companies, the producers, and then companies like mine who are finding and developing this stuff. But I just want to say that I don't want anybody, there's nothing in life is easy. Timing is everything. And, we have no debt. and we run a really good business. And since I've taken over, I've delivered a 500% return to my shareholders. And I think there's a long way to go. The company's grown from 20 million to 320 million.
Wow.
So I've added a lot of value. But having said all that, there's risks, and you need to understand that. And if you don't want to take risks, buy physical silver, buy physical gold. And then if you want to take some risks, get educated. Follow people like Rick Rule and the experts who are vetting these opportunities for you.
That seems to me like you're an expert as well. And but I agree with everything that you've said today, and I think you've stated it very eloquently. And Jordan, I really appreciate the invite to come join on this show with the both of you. I've certainly got a lot out of it. I hope other people have too. But hence, like I said, I learned more in 45 minutes from my discussions with Shawn than I have in all the years before that. So I hope we can do this again, Shawn, sometime soon. I know we're already going on an hour and 10 minutes. I know you've got things to do as well, but I'd love to pick up where we left off and do this again. I know that I'll be on a show with you here in the near future with Jay Martin. That's one of the two shows, by the way, that I never miss. And I think, Jordan, you should come to this show with me next year in January in Vancouver, the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. It is one of the very best. I go to two. I go to his, I go to Rick's, and it's one you should check out. But I know we're on a show together next week and look forward to that. But I'd love to do this as often as possible. I'd love to come back and be part of what you guys are doing. I think it's really important people understand the benefits of mining shares. I've owned mining shares personally for over 30 years. And I think it's something that people who, to Shawn's point, once you have your physical underneath you, having something that will allow you leverage and fantastic upside potential and run by a smart guy like Shawn, getting to know what his thoughts are and what his plans are. It's a real benefit to your listeners, Jordan. I hope people will listen to this and listen to what he has to say, because there are fantastic opportunities out there. Let's just be honest. The mining industry has been kind of ignored for a long time. They will have their day, in my opinion, and a property like his ought to do very well. I don't say this for any other reason than I own the shares myself personally. But really, in reality, Shawn and I haven't talked too much ever. I spent more time talking with him 3 weeks ago than I have in all the years that I've known him. So this is coming from me personally, and I just think it's important to understand mining shares. So I'm glad that you two have connected, and I appreciate the invite today and love to come back and do it with you guys again sometime soon.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to continue this this journey, meeting Shawn, picking his brain, and I'm excited for this. So, yeah, is there any final thoughts, Shawn? Anything you wanted to say before we head off?
Just grateful, guys. And Andy, humbled
Yeah.
by your comments. No words, and I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, absolutely. Likewise.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys can check out dollyvardensilver.com. You guys have a YouTube channel or anything? You wanna, I can
We're
link.
all over social, and I'm happy to provide you with those links. Silver
Okay.
Varden, yeah.
Yeah, I'll post them in the description.
And
All
I'll
right.
send this out to my list as well. I think we have 70,000 people that should listen to
Yeah,
what you have to say. And like I said, it's all about character and relationships, and it's easy to tell just by looking at you and to talking with you that you're for real, and that's important, very important, the most important thing. And I know Rick Rule vouches for that, so that's good enough for me. So again, thanks, guys. I appreciate it very much. Shawn, I wish you all the best. I look forward to chatting with you soon. And Jordan, as always, brother, I look forward to talking to you real soon too.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.